First of all, this is the most important question of the day. How many of you guys were actually born? 1, 2, maybe. This is actually just to see how many are awake, and I'm very concerned now. So of course, I ask this because going into any program, we already kind of talked about the fact that when a speaker gets up and starts talking about everything they have, you can shrink in your seat pretty quickly. You can feel pretty small and out of, overwhelmed. So I bring this up because I have 2 things I want you to know. Number 1, everybody was born. I did not, I wasn't born with a camera in my hand. I picked it up one day, and just like most of you, you found that day and you fell in love with this. And one of my biggest concerns in the industry, especially in the industry that we're in right now, is how people how they feel about the industry. There's this big upheaval about the fact that there's too many photographers and too many shooters and too many, people are destroying the industry, and that is not true. And this is coming from somebody who has been through an entire evolution, including digital and the female sort of switch over and all of that. I've been through it all, and the truth is business is very live and very thriving. Yes, we're in a bad economy, but we're going to talk about that later. But the truth is, my concern is when I hear photographers say things, and I hate these statements, weekend warrior, mom photographer, or what are some of the slang words for moms? Those are my favorites. Oh, and of course you would know it. No, I'll snag you. Oh, what do they call moms? Moms with cameras. I mean, there's a couple different ones. I hear those things being flung around like they're dirty words, and it drives me nuts because I want to take that person and say, okay, now tell me, if you were born, what gives you the right to say that you're a professional photographer and not everybody else the right to become one? I believe it's all about dreams. I believe it's about following your passion. And the truth is, for me, there was a time that I fell in love with photography and I decided to follow my dream. And why would anyone get to take that away from you? It's just not right. So the problem is not how many photographers there are. If you're out there and you want to be a photographer, do it, because it is the greatest job in the world. And I don't care if people get mad at me for saying that, because it's the truth. You just get one life. However, there is a huge problem out there, and it has more to do with 2 factors: how new photographers are pricing and how they're delivering their work. That is absolutely destroying this industry. The fact that there are photographers out there, I saw recently, what do they call those ads, those like weekly ads that they do, Groupons. We saw a Groupon that was a new photographer in our area, new and unknown. She was doing a custom session up to a 50-mile radius. She was going to do a 3-hour custom session, and you got 99 images on a disc for $99. It literally made me cry. I saw it and I thought, how could you do this? I wanted to call her, and not to be angry with her, but to help her understand that she is literally putting the rest of us out of business. Because we're going to talk about my pricing structure later, but our prices, 8x10s, our least expensive 8x10 is $150. And so you can imagine when somebody's giving 100 images away for $1 a piece, how can I turn to a client and justify what I'm doing? So my goal is always to elevate and educate the industry. Because to be honest with you, if I teach all of you how to price, I'm actually doing myself the biggest favor, because I'm protecting my own job. So I want to keep that in mind. Wouldn't it be great if every single person in that audience out there, if all of us had a standard 8x10 started at $150? If the entire world knew that that's what you had to pay for an 8x10, we'd all be in a really good space. So that will always be my goal. The second piece, I love this quote: I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that will not work. That is literally the blood in my body. I screw everything up. There's nothing I do literally that does not get done wrong the first time. A lot of that has to do with my energy level. I'm like a doer. I'm the jump and we'll build the parachute on the way down girl. And I have people with brooms behind me going, are you kidding me? And so that's kind of how I live my life. And I'm not saying it's the right way to do it, because I've made a lot of very costly, expensive mistakes. But I've also learned from those mistakes. And my job here is to give you that information and perhaps circumvent you making the same mistakes. So that is really my goal here. So understand, mistakes are wonderful. I actually pride myself in a lot of them, because I feel like they're sort of the catalyst to bring me to where I am today. So don't be afraid to make a mistake. Certainly don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do this, because you have all the rights that we all do. This is my own personal quote. Don't tell me I'm burning the candle at both ends. Tell me where to get more wax. Anybody living that dream? This is my life. I want to talk about balance too. And I'm kind of sorry I put all this in the beginning, because I know viewers come and go, and it's important that people understand who I am Because when I talk about money and building businesses and stuff, it's one Sandy Putsch, but the truth is, I have to make sure people understand that I'm certainly not perfect. The number one question I get asked by attendees is, how do you manage everything you do? And they always say, how do you balance? The catchword, buzzword is balance. How do you balance everything? Well, I'm here to tell you there is no balance in life. And if there were balance, we wouldn't have a point of being here. Honestly, I mean, if everything were perfect and just was easy, there wouldn't be a reason. So I'm not perfectly balanced. I had to sacrifice a lot to do what I did. I made choices, which you all have to do. I made some bad choices, and I made some really amazing choices along the way. So there is no balance. You don't have to worry about if you have 3 kids. And I always have students come up to me and say, I've got like 3 kids and I don't, and I'm at home and I'm working out of my house and my husband doesn't really support me. And I usually want to turn to him and say, you know, until you have 10 kids, I actually don't know. I'm just kidding. There's no sympathy there until you hit 10, all right? But, you know, I understand that there are phases in life. When my children were babies, that was the biggest priority. As they've grown up, I've been able to expand and grow and do the things like teach here and do things like that. So understand there are some things you can never get back, and you should always hold on to those things. And then there are some things that you just have to let go. You can't do everything. Do the things that you love and do them well, and get more wax, honestly. Go find it, because it's out there. All right, my goal is to share a complete marketing program today. I want to cover from A to Z what it is that you need to do to build a baby program. Again, the baby program is the foundation of what I do. But this is really important that you understand. I'm not here to give you more money. I can do that. It is an effect of what's going to happen here. But the truth is, nobody goes to their grave saying, I wish I would have worked harder. And that's the truth. So we all know that this is not about work. This is actually about time with the people that we love and understanding the value of that time, because there is a price to be paid every time you leave the people that you love. And so keep that in mind, that my goal is actually to give you more time. And in order to do that, you have to have more money. And so I get both, but never put money before time, and you will get where you want to be. You will get home with the people that you love. So understand, this is never going to be about money. For me, it never has been. You have to understand, at 17 years old, this is the only job I ever had. This is like a giant Monopoly game for me. I get lots of money and it goes right back out. So just like you, we all live the same life, but it's never been a real job. I certainly, don't get me wrong, I believe it's a profession, but it's always been a passion, and I'm very blessed to have done that. So unless you consider Kentucky Fried Chicken a major career move, this is it for me. So I have a couple questions for you guys. What is your idea? I need some of you to kind of shout out here, and I'm assuming you're queued up for sound. What is one of your ideas of a perfect day? I want you to imagine from start to finish a perfect day. Somebody get brave. Just raise your hand so we know who you are. There you go.
All the kids going to school. Get to do. I love school time. Holidays drive me insane because I get to go to school and that's my time. I can do a shoot in the morning. I can get my editing done in the afternoon, and then they come home from school and then it's family time. So and then that works well.
Very good. And somebody else, perfect day.
I was going to say, for my wife and I, it's like being at a restaurant. You know, the kids are somewhere safe. We just love food, and you know, just being at a restaurant, happy.
For a whole day?
That's just lunch.
Okay, good. Well, give me a little more of that day. What else would you do, though?
Oh, good. Just being with the kids, and either being somewhere new or just spending time with the kids and the family. Yeah.
That's perfect. And I know you raised your hand, but actually, you gave me exactly what I wanted. That was perfect, because your version of the perfect day was actually kids away and working and doing what you love and you're passionate about it. Your version was with your kids and having a little private time with your wife. There is nothing, those are both perfect. That is exactly what I was looking for, because if you were to ask me when I was 19 years old, my idea, I didn't have kids, but my idea of a perfect day was it had a camera involved. It was get out there, shoot like crazy, go to New York City, just run around. You know, I had all kinds of fun things I want to do. If you ask me now my idea of a perfect day, there is not a camera anywhere in that day. So understand that everybody's perfect day is totally different. Everybody has a different version of what it is they want to do with that time we talked about. Like I said, my perfect day has some sand and a beach and a little non-alcoholic fruity drink on the side, and maybe my kid's there, maybe not. It just depends on the day, but I mean, it's really interesting how it's evolved, and it changes often. And so that's something you have to understand, is you have to know your perfect day before you can get to have one. And so you need to start recognizing that and writing that down. Now, this quote was actually sent to me many years ago by a friend. You know how your friends send all kinds of garbage and things back and forth? You know, you get some funny things and some not appropriate things and some over-the-top things. And this one is one of those that when I saw this quote, I happened to open it up and I read it, and it literally took my breath away. I read it, and then I read it a second time, and it said, what you do today is important because you are exchanging a day of your life for it. And I must have been at one of those emotional points in my life because I kind of thought about my day and I realized that I was kind of wasting it, and I was frustrated about something, and you know, I was kind of a little irritated. And so I took a big breath and I started thinking about it. Now, I'm one of those like really analytical, like figure it out kind of people. So I actually, at that time, whatever age I was, I decided to do the math. I thought, okay, I'm going to figure out how many days do I actually have left. And so I figured I want to live to be about 80 years old, something like that. 90 would be nice, but I took 80 as the number, and I divided 80 by the 365 days a year, or timesed it by that, and to figure out exactly how many days I had left. Well, I ended up having about a little over 13,000 days left, assuming that I got to live to be 80 years old. Now, some of us know that we may not make it that far. Some of us may live longer. But at that time, I saw the number $13,000, 13,000. There we go. It's all about money. Just kidding. I saw the number 13,000, and I got really sad. 13,000 did not seem like very many days to me, honestly. And if you equate that, which is where I was going, to dollars, $13,000, how fast could you go through $13,000? And so I started thinking about that, and I started thinking about the value of each day and how many days. If you go back to that what's your idea of a perfect day slide, and you think about your life, how many perfect days do you actually get in a year? Just honestly, how many perfect days have you had in a year? Perfect days. 3, 10. I mean, that's kind of scary, 3 to 10 perfect days a year. And if you think about how many years we're living and times it by 3 to 10, you're working really hard for those perfect days. And so we have to maximize and get to those perfect days. Now, one of the best stories that ever came out of this slide is I had a in-studio workshop with about 20 students, and I told that story. And it's a very emotional story, and I tend to get a little teary-eyed. And I had a student that a year later came back for a second workshop, and you do the part where you go around the room and you stand up and introduce yourself, and she stood up, I'm not kidding, and started to cry almost out of the gate, talking about the fact that last year I had given her this quote, and she read it to the audience that was there, and she said, because of this quote, I have lost 50 pounds. She said, because of this quote, I got into counseling with my husband, and we took care of our marriage. Because of this quote, I quit working and started a full-time photography job. And all of us with tears in our eyes are so emotional. And she said, it's because when I knew I only had 1,300 days left, I had to make changes. And I literally heard her say 1,300 days, and I was like, do I tell her?
Sandy, we just wanted to share with you some of what the internet is saying about their perfect days.
Oh, very good.
Cool. So let's see. Go ahead.
I was going to say, BH Photos, perfect day, all my family around me laughing.
Nice. And Jay Torres, my perfect day is a day without drama from home and work, where we just chill out and enjoy company as well as our company as family. And go ahead.
RK says, my idea of a perfect day is to take great pictures and being proud of what I've done.
Very cool.
And then, I love this. SDF59, perfect day would be get and go to work at Creative Live. Anyhow, just wanted to share some of those with you.
No, thank you guys out there. Thank you. We love to hear that, and I love the interaction that way as well. So the end of the story was when she said 1,300 days, I mean, I realized how many life changes she had made because in her, now we all know if she would have really done the math, she would have figured it out and that it wasn't possible. But finally, with all of us crying in the room, I finally turned to her and I explained to her that it was a little closer to 13,000 days. But I almost didn't want to take that away from her because she had made such a difference. So at that point, we actually, that group in that room, we created a little group called the 1300 Club. And we decided that we were going to live every day as if we only had 1,300 left because we realized that that was a whole lot more urgent than 13,000. So I want you all to be kind of a part of that 1300 Club. And I want you to understand that what we have to do is really important. All right, now I don't mean to be rude and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but you can't leave footprints in the sand of time if you're sitting on your butt. And who wants to leave butt prints in the sand of time? I really am not trying to offend, but this quote also is one of those that I have to live by, because everything I'm going to teach you today takes work. There is no easy button. There's no way I can give you the magical tool that's going to save your company. Everything I did took work, and everything you're going to do will take work as well. So understand that, there's some great joy that comes running through the sand, but if you're just sitting there, it's not going to happen for you. So understand there is work involved as well. Now, we're going to get into the meat of the program, the why the bellies and babies. Why did I choose this program to present first? Well, the nice thing about the baby program is there are always new parents excited to participate. It doesn't matter where you live in the world, there is always a baby being born. It doesn't matter the economy or the demographics, there is always a baby being brought into this world, which in turn gives us a never-ending supply of clients. And of course, our goal really, it's not necessarily to get as many clients as we can. Our goal is to create those lasting relationships. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that works. And by doing that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my timeline and how the baby program actually started for me and how I grew my business. As I told you, very young, I realized that babies were kind of the way to go. It wasn't even a business decision, it was an emotional decision, but that's what I loved, that's what I did. I was in the industry just like yourself, trying to get all the information, went to seminars, people talked about various different versions of baby programs, so I decided to implement one into my studio, and I started a baby program. In fact, it was called the Watch Me Grow program many, many, many years ago. I built that out of my home in Colorado and continued to grow. It was the staple of what I did, and continued to grow. Eventually got into my studio space, and I started to change things, and I started to evolve into a higher end studio. I went to a class that was more of a money management class, and we started doing averages, things that we don't like as photographers to do, talking about all the dollars and where they come from, and we did the math, and we did all the spreadsheets and the P&Ls and all of that, and we started looking at my numbers and where I made money, and it was very clear that I made the most money photographing family portraits. I wasn't a very successful, I loved wedding photography. I enjoyed wedding photography, but for the hours involved, it wasn't very profitable for me. I would have to charge 10 times more than I was charging, and it was taking me away from my children. And all the way down to the baby program. Eventually we hit the Watch Me Grow program, and we realized that out of everything that I was creating, the baby program had the lowest sales averages. It was the small spenders. So after talking to these people, and this is many years of having one, we decided that maybe it would be better to eliminate the baby program, just not have one. So in order to do that, I stopped promoting the baby program. Now, there were already babies in the program, and we continued to let them evolve through and grow, and then we just sort of let it fade away. So unless you asked about it, it didn't happen, and that was fine. And in truth, my business started to grow, and my sales averages increased because I was doing the better children's and family sessions, and so I did, in fact, make more money. But now let's fast forward it to right after 9/11, because right after that time, many of you know, we went into a recession point right after that, about a year after. And I started to see my numbers decline. Now, in this industry, I've actually been through 3 recessions. The first one, I was very young, and it turns out that when you're really poor and have nothing, recessions don't bother you at all. Like, you don't feel anything. It's like you can't afford to go to dinner, and you still can't afford to go to dinner, so it works out really great. From that recession, came this one, which was right after 9/11, and that was very different for me because for me, I had about 8 or 9 employees at that point, and all of a sudden I had people that I was responsible for, and I had to make money, and so things were getting really hard for me. And honestly, from the time I started my company, we have only, up till this point, had only seen success. Every year I was adding about $100,000 a year to my bottom line, and so I was kind of very whimsical about the whole thing. I didn't really feel that there was a huge problem until after the holidays. I came into my financial office, and a bookkeeper looked up at me, and this was about February or March, and she said, we have a problem. And I'm a totally, glasses half full person, and I said, nope, we don't have a problem, we have a solution. And she looked at me and she said, okay, what's your solution? We have no money. And I was like, we have a problem. And so I was kind of in a panic mode, and at first I honestly didn't believe her. I said, that's impossible. We just came off of the holidays. We always have, that's where we have a big chunk of change. Yes, I know we have to use it for payroll in January and February, but that's where we get our money, is that holiday season. Well, she started to show me the numbers from the previous years, and session counts were down and sales averages were down up to 50%. So all this time that I thought I was just a better photographer and I had a better life, I was actually shooting less and it was hurting more. And so I started to panic. Now this is one of those horrible stories where I have a company, I have employees, and I don't know what to do. The first thing I did, because I had no, and this was a payroll moment. This is one of those, you have 8 people that need a paycheck on Friday. It's Wednesday, where are you getting that money? And the first thing I did is I went out and I drained my savings account and I took everything I'd ever earned and I put it into my payroll. Sorry, hang on, woo. Therapy was gonna kick in, I know. But I had to drain my savings account for that. And then 2 weeks went by and the next payroll came up. And at that point, I had to turn to my mother-in-law and ask for a very big loan to make that payroll. Now you can imagine that was like the depths of sorrow. It was a horrible experience to be in. But that was it at that point. Now understand that's a 4-week process. During that time, we did what we call emergency marketing, which everybody's very familiar with. This is the holy crap, I'm out of money. I'm going to give stuff away and pray that people come in, which is, by the way, not recommended. That's a great way to lose your shirt, but we had to start doing that. So we were seeing some income from these free sessions, free offers, free 8x10s, all that stuff that we do when we're starting out. And it was making a little difference, but by the time I borrowed that money from my mother-in-law, I was severely depressed. I realized that not only did I have all these children and 8 employees and overhead and all of this stuff, but I was running out of ideas. And this experience was really one of those intersections in your life that changes everything, because I happened to be sitting at my desk with a pile of bills this big, literally with my head on the desk like this, and my receptionist came by and she said, your next session's here. And I said, all right, and I put my head up and I very begrudgingly got up and started walking towards the studio. And this is one of those, I walked in the door, I opened the door, and here is this beautiful little 8-year-old girl sitting there. She's absolutely breathtaking. It was a communion session, so she's all in white, and she's got the little white wreath and the little white tights, and just absolutely gorgeous, hair all done up. And I walked in, and just walking in the room, I felt my heart start to beat a little bit, and just because she was so beautiful. And we started the session, and I started working with her, and we all know the perfect session, right? The one where everything is amazing. And by the way, they don't happen very often. Not to me either, but this was a classic perfect session. The child was right, the clothing was right, the hair was right, the light was right. It was just magical. And I started creating, and I happened to have a session that canceled after her. So I had a full 2 hours at that time. Actually, I worked on the 45 minutes. I had a whole hour and a half to work with this young lady. And we did some of the most magical pictures I'd ever created. And truly, at the end of the session, my heart was so full. And I turned to the mom, and I said to her, and she has no idea why I did this, but I turned to her and I said, I want you to know that this was probably one of the most meaningful sessions that I have ever had in my life. And I just want to thank you for that. And she looked at me and she said something that changed everything, because she looked at me and she said, well, you do realize, Sandy, she said, you do realize that you are the only person that has ever photographed my daughter. And of course, when she said that, I looked at her daughter, and I'm sure you've all done this before, but I sort of did that little timeline of all of her birthday portraits that I'd ever photographed, and in my mind, it went all the way back to that original first session. And her original session with me was a baby plant session. She was a 3-month-old in one of those little white wicker baskets with the white blankets, and that was actually the first time I'd ever met that child. And so I sat there and I looked at this little girl, and I realized that in that time frame, I had created a customer for life. And a big light went off. I realized that the day I ended the baby program was the day I cut off that connection, that I had stopped that. And if you cry, I'll cry, so don't do that. Can we get the tissue in the house, please? I forgot to bring the branded tissue. Sorry, but that's the day. Oh, you killed me. Why'd you do that? You too. You need to move those off to the peripheral, please. Thank you. That was the day that I realized that by cutting off that baby program, I had actually cut off that connection. And I walked out of that room with every intention of creating the world's best baby program. Now, what I knew from my old program was, in fact, that the sales averages were way too low. So I spent about 2 years, or almost 2.5 years, evolving and changing and building and making it get to the point where it worked. And then we practiced with it, and we got it even to a higher standpoint. And eventually, what I thought perfected it at the time, and that was actually 2008, and that's when we went out and did the Bellies and Babies tour, because I realized so much of my life, that literally saved my ship. It put me back in business. We had to work very hard for it, but all of a sudden, I was watching babies coming in, and I was watching them grow up again. And I was never going to break that connection again, ever. And I never have. I truly believe in it. But I also was not going to have a baby program that was going to have a $100 sales average, because I knew that that wouldn't work either. So that was really my evolution from baby program to no baby program back to a baby program as well.